The Senate will now come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will now be led by Chief of Staff Tax, followed by a moment of silence and reflection.
If willing and able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. You may be seated.
The clerk will now call the roll. Please correct the pronunciation of your name if it is incorrect.
Baber. Barnes. Barr. Bracy. Bryant. Calder. Cost. Creed. Durham. Galavati. Galt. Goldstein. Gruner. Hamilton. Harvey. Heater. Hensley. Hurd. Howe. Kay. Kuhn. Kwame. Keene. LaPinta. Lapsley. Lazarenu. Lynn. Malachi. Brandon Miller. Isabella Miller. Montalto. Morgan. Wynn. Peterson. Rangavajula. Ravi. Sane. Sellers. Spittler. Tanner. Badlamani. Vaught. Wenzel. Whitehead.
With the quorum being present, is there a motion to approve the Journal of October 25th, 2023 as found online? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now in line for general orders of the Senate, beginning with our special guests. The Residence Hall Association, you are recognized to give a report before the body.
Hello. I am Will Dora, Vice President of RHA, if you did not know. So first, the Advocacy Committee is putting up legislation about lighting around campus. We've talked about this a good amount, but we're at a point where we are now just taking a lot of pictures to be able to present that with the legislation that we eventually pass. A sustainability event with a ton of campus partners happening on Friday from 2 to 5, Davis Field and Green Street. Student government is actually a part of this event. So we actually now have a date for our Operation Renovation, which is our advocacy project each year. Location is to be determined, but we're going to do it November 27th at 7:30 p.m. We're hosting town halls to see what people in the residence halls really want renovated first, so we can prioritize those things. The conference went super well this past weekend. We had over 31 universities and over 250 people come for our RHA conference. Went super well. We're also talking about doing a checkout system for cleaning supplies and board games in the neighborhood service offices. That way residents can just go and check out cleaning supplies or board games if they did need it. RA application is open until tonight. We have a lot of RHA people that are applying for that as well. And if that was something that you guys were interested in, it is still open. We've also passed a resolution about food waste after events or in the closing of dining halls. We think there is like a lot of communication to happen about this, just the fact that like people don't know where the food goes after an event or after the dining hall closes. And we also passed a recommendation about Wi-Fi on the Horseshoe. So the Horseshoe neighborhood in particular, the Wi-Fi is particularly bad on the Horseshoe due to those buildings being so old. And it is being looked into. We also passed the new student union expansion resolution that is actually on the docket for you guys today. If passed, this will be our first joint resolution. And we do have some student government senators who have reached out about collaborating on sustainability efforts, and they are beginning to work with our committee. And finally, RHA did agree to do the donation drive competition, and we're excited to get a lot of different items for the community shop. I yield my time to questions.
The Vice President yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Vice President? And point of information, the RHA bill is still going through rules, so it will be seen on the docket next week. Are there any other questions for the Vice President? Senator Heater.
We do. We green certify every event. It is a new standard this year.
Any other questions? Senator Hensley.
I do not think it's written in our codes yet, but it is something that we're working on doing. We just started it. I guess it would have technically started in September. For every neighborhood event has to be green certified, as well as our exec events.
Chairwoman Heater.
Absolutely. Do you know Abby Jope? Yes. Email her.
Any other questions for the Vice President? Seeing none, thank you so much. We're now in line for reports from Senate leadership. Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd, you are recognized to give a report on the Rules Committee.
Good afternoon. I will keep this report short since Courtney has a very special birthday to celebrate and we got to get out of here. So, and we've got to party it up. So, we've got 4 pieces of legislation and rules. They're all moving forward. We'll see them and it'll be great. But I did want to provide context to the Senate as a whole. We are going to see an ad hoc committee resolution. And so what ad hoc means is special. It exists to serve one purpose. And so this is an ad hoc committee on finance reform, meaning that it's a new committee that will be in the Senate. We'll have a 9th committee that will meet to research financial legislation and fixing, the different things that we've been talking about. So if you are interested, when that hits the floor, we're going to move to pass it by acclamation. Assuming it passes by acclamation, then we are going to do a little weird maneuver and go back into the motion period so that way you all have a chance at that time to add yourself to the committee if you think that you want to do it. So I highly encourage that. And with that being said, I yield to questions.
And point of information, this committee does not affect your 3 standing or maximum of 3 standing committees in one minimum committee. So it is truly a group that hopefully would be passionate about the issue of finance reform, not only at the student government level, but possibly at the level of the student activity fee as well. You guys will be taking on both issues and releasing a report that will have a significant amount of research in it, recommending action for this body to take. So then President Thompson and President Emeritus can work on advocating for that at the Board of Trustees level and higher. And with that, the Speaker Pro Tempore yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Speaker Pro Tempore? Saying none, thank you so much. We'll now hear a report from the Academics Committee. Chairwoman Creed, you are recognized.
Hi, everyone. My report will also be short because academics did not meet this past week. I've had exams every day, but we will meet again next week, and we will continue working on our initiatives. And with that, I yield to questions.
The Chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Finance Committee. Chairman Kuhn, you are recognized.
Hello, everybody. Finance Committee met last Friday for our usual finance meeting. We actually got out a little bit early for once, which was very exciting for all of us. And I think we allocated around $21,000 last Friday. So yeah, with that, I yield to questions.
The Chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chairman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Health and Safety Committee. Chairwoman Ravi, you are recognized.
Hey guys, so business as usual in health and safety, we just discussed our initiatives, and then this week, actually today, you guys are gonna see a piece of health and safety legislation on the second reading calendar. And with that, I yield to questions.
The Chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Inclusion and Equity Committee. Chairwoman Bracy, you are recognized.
Hey y'all, how are y'all doing? So this week we did meet briefly, but there was a little bit of miscommunication. Since I was not here last week, I did not know about some of our new committee members. So we really just did a mental health check-in, and we're going to reevaluate our initiatives for next week. I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We'll now hear a report from the Judiciary Committee. Chairman Bryant, you are recognized.
Good evening, everybody. So Judiciary met this past Friday at 8 p.m. in the K.J. Williams courtroom at the School of Law in order to have 2 hearings. The report of those hearings are as follows. So we had a favorable rating for a Miss Abigail Pogue for Elections Commission. She was found favorable by the committee by a vote of 3 to 2. And then we also interviewed Miss Corey Dunn for a nomination of Associate Justice. She was found unanimously unfavorable by the Judiciary Committee. The Judiciary Committee recommends not confirming her this evening. And then we also reviewed one piece of legislation, and that was SBL 11524, which you'll see tonight. And that was seen as unanimously favorable by the committee. And I will yield to questions.
The chairman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now hear a report from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Chairwoman Baber, you are recognized.
Hey everybody, Powers and Responsibilities met Monday at 7 p.m. like we usually do. We interviewed 4 candidates for applications of senators and found 3 unfavorable and 1 unanimously favorable. So we welcome her. She's in the back and she will be introduced shortly. We have 2 more people on the calendar for next week for interviews and 5 seats available. I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you so much. We will now hear a report from the Student Life Committee. Chairwoman Malachi, you are recognized.
Good evening, everyone. So Student Life did not meet this week at 6 o'clock, although we do have 2 pieces of legislation coming through this evening on the first reading calendar. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Sustainability Committee. Chairwoman Heater, you are recognized.
Hi everyone. So we met last Friday at 2:30 as usual. We found SBL 11522 unanimously favorable, and we look forward to voting on that legislation tonight. We are also in the process of drafting green certification legislation, and as the RHA was saying, they are currently using that for all their events, so we're looking in the plausibility of using that for student government events. I just met with Gloria Esteen, who's in charge of green certification for Sustainable Carolina. I'm working on getting quotes from her that I can use to present to all of you to explain like how green certification works and just like demystify the process once the legislation is brought out to all of you. And with that, I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now have a report from Freshman Council. Are there any representatives from the Freshman Council present? You guys are recognized to give a report before the body.
Okay, thank you, Speaker. My name is Addie Ray Allen, and I'm here today representing the Health and Safety Committee for Freshman Council.
And my name is Julia Pehe, and I'm representing the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at Freshman Council. So for our committee, DEI, our main event right now is the Spur in Discussions, which is a table at Green Street, where students can answer questions and share personal experiences about mental health or other like fun things related to that if they feel comfortable with. And the goal is to share those videos in either the UFSC student account or the student government one to encourage others and show that they're not alone in that situation.
The Health and Safety Committee is currently working on a mental health tabling event called Meet, Greet, and Treat, in which students can come up and meet counselors and or representatives from the mental health department while enjoying some sort of sweet treat, still, an idea. And our goal is to just better educate students about the mental health resources our campus provides and overall destigmatize the use of them. And we're also trying to organize a chalk event that will take place either the week or 2 before finals, just for students to write positive messages, study tips, draw pictures, so that you are met with positivity during such a stressful time, and it also serves as a creative outlet for students.
And a little report about the other committees. Academics is working on giving hot tea and hot chocolate for students outside of the library during finals week. And they're also working on getting professors to post the class syllabus a week before class starts.
For community outreach, they're trying to organize a service day in the spring for their long-term goal. And the committee has actually already reached out to the Epworth Children's Home regarding doing some sort of Christmas party or tabling event for donations for their toy drive.
Yes, Student Life is doing a tabling event where they're gonna write like encouraging positive messages as well, like before finals week. And whenever the people grab the notes, they're gonna give Celsius for free. And they're also doing in January what's called Carolina Cast Off, which is a little thing they're gonna do on in front of the library where you just light up fire and say goodbye to 2023. Something fun like that.
And Sustainability Committee is looking forward to working with the Ronald McDonald House to collect bottle caps.
We had our time to questions.
The representatives yield to questions. Are there any questions for the representatives? Chairman Kuhn.
Sorry? It's been going good. Actually, some of the questions, we have like 2 fun questions that most people are answering, and the other one that's more personal, it's about like the mental health. We've been getting less people to answer, but we've been getting some people from student government to help us out with that one. So it's going well so far. Today was better than Wednesday.
Certainly, yeah.
Than Monday.
I was helping table today, and we had a pretty good turnout.
Any other questions for the representatives? Seeing none, thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause. We will now hear a report from the Constitutional Council. Chief Justice Buchmeier, you are recognized.
Evening, everyone. I have nothing to report, and with that, I'll yield to questions.
The Chief Justice yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chief Justice? Seeing none, thank you so much. We will now hear a report from the Speaker of the Student Senate, Cameron Eubanks. Chief of Staff Courtney Tax, you are recognized.
Hi, friends. Happy Wednesday. So I'm incredibly happy to report that the Senate BIOS has been recovered, guys. We called Google, got him back. So if you haven't filled that out, I'm not going to embarrass anybody today. But if you haven't filled it out, I will be saying names again next week. So if you are a new senator and you're not in the drive yet, please email me and include your Gmail, and I'll add you to that so you'll be able to access it. When you click on 115th Student Senate, it'll be on that first page. Senate BIOS is the only slide presentation in there, so just fill out your slide. I did want to bring up attendance. Attendance has been going very, very well, but I did just want to preface, I am very lenient. Like I said, I have been very lenient. There are only 2 things that I mark as unexcused. If you email me after Senate starts, and if you don't give me an excuse at all. Just give me an excuse, guys. If you tell me nothing and you're just like, I'm not going to be there, I can't excuse that. And if you let me know into Senate that you're not going to be here, unless you're in a car accident or you're deathly ill, I can't excuse that either. So yeah, I think I'm keeping it brief today. So with that, I yield my time to questions.
The Chief of Staff yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chief of Staff? And point of information, it is the Chief of Staff's birthday today. Super exciting. Yes, we love it. But something on to a little bit more serious. In terms of attendance, that also goes for if you have to leave early from Senate. Again, like we normally don't go till 9 o'clock, which is what this reservation is till 9 o'clock. And technically what the codes say is our time period. So that being said, please try to stay fully present if you can and fully aware as we are starting to get more legislation, so we need your votes. And so if you have to leave early and you know that in advance, fill out the proxy form like people have been doing. Or, if it's something that comes up in the middle of the session, you need to make sure that Courtney is texted or emailed, preferably texted right away. so that when I grant it knowing that she knows where you're going, and you're not just skipping Senate. Yes. Awesome. Any other questions for the Chief of Staff? Seeing none, thank you so much. We'll now hear a report from the Student Body Treasurer. Chief of Staff Duty, you are recognized.
Good evening, everyone. So Hannah couldn't be here today, so once again, you guys get me. But we don't have too much going on. I mean, it's just normal stuff. You know, our comptrollers are sending stuff through. But I did want to take this time to show support for the creation of the ad hoc committee for finance reform. It's something that going into this term, we have been looking at very heavily. And like realistically, we can't get anything done without you guys. Like we need like people from Senate to help us. We need your opinions, and we need like physical legislation if that's the path we're going towards. So I encourage you guys, like even if like you don't know anything about it, like join the committee, like at least get knowledgeable on the student activity fund, where it's going, how much is left, because it's very important to the Senate. So yeah, and with that I yield my time to questions.
The Chief of Staff yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chief of Staff? Seeing none, thank you. We are now in line for a report from the Student Body Vice President. Chief of Staff Budensky, you are recognized.
Hey guys, how you doing? Lately with VP staff, we haven't had so much going on, but right now we're working on setting up a Smash the Scale next week. I believe we're working with the Graduate Student Association to pull that off, but we will have more information coming out in a text to you guys about that tomorrow night. Froco's doing great. They had a great presentation, and IA should be giving us all some mentor updates soon. So that's exciting. But with that, I yield to questions.
The Chief of Staff yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chief of Staff? And point of information, the Smash the Scale event is part of our next big programming week, which is called Carolina Beautiful Week. It is happening next week, so please try to be involved in those events that the VP's office is putting on. And it is to promote body positivity and other things around campus and just good mental health in general. So please come out for that.
And if I could unyield for a second, I know there will be tabling opportunities. So if any of you guys have any time at any point next week, just look in the SG-wide group me. I'm sure we'll have information on how we could get you all involved. Yeah, re-yield.
Any other questions for the Chief of Staff? Seeing none, thank you. We are now in line for a report from the Student Body President. President Thompson, you are recognized.
Hi, everyone. I hope you all had a fun Halloween. This week, our staff's been working hard on several different initiatives. We're planning out different ideas for marketing the Uber discount program, the pilot program for the Carolina Clemson game. We're also creating a graphic for Blackboard to inform students of deadlines for buying and renewing parking passes for the spring. We're looking into some older codes to look at different cabinet structures to see how that body can better function to serve the student body. So some of you may be getting reached out to about some potential restructuring ideas. Our Director of Constituent Services has been spearheading a competition between us and RHA to do a basic needs drive the week of November 13th through 17th for the community shop. So we'll have a graphic and more info coming soon, but super excited for how that will coincide with other food insecurity initiatives and programming events StudentGov is doing in the month of November. Our government relations team had their first GR-WAD meeting this week where they went over a lot of really important information on how to better advocate and execute well at all 3 levels. They're working hard on the GR survey, which will be going out very, very soon. We're super excited because we'll be incentivizing that survey by offering the chance to win a free garage permit with a reserved parking spot, either Pendleton or Bull Street Garage. GR has also been planning Carolina Day at the State House, which will be February 13th. Today I had the opportunity to give a report to the Faculty Senate about the Barnes & Noble First Year Complete program and just share concerns about the cost for students and the current opt-out version. Faculty was very much in agreement that an opt-in version is something to look into, but currently how it sits, it would not be beneficial for students and our academic experience overall. Was also able to participate in a UN01 panel this week to discuss with some freshmen different ways to get involved, make the most of your experience. Like I said, we're continuing to work on the Uber discount program for the Carolina Clemson game. Definitely been quite a process, but I think people have seen that there's a need for it, and so I'm hopeful in years to come it will be a more permanent game day rideshare program. I also had the chance to meet with President Amaritas this week. We primarily discussed my plans for presenting to the Board of Trustees in December, as well as just the general larger scale initiative student government is advocating for. I also spoke with him about the meetings our Deputy Secretary of Academics and myself have been having with the Dean of Libraries and library staff about keeping the library open 24 hours during finals. We do actually have the exact cost of that now, and the President has reassured me that we'll be able to fund that. He's actually giving us the money to do that. So we're now in a stage of working out logistics. So hopefully we'll have that 24-hour library by fall exam week, and if not, absolute latest will be by the spring. And with that, I yield my time for questions.
The student body president yields to questions. Are there any questions for the president? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Happy birthday, Courtney.
We are now in line for special orders of the Senate. Are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
A communication from the Office of the Speaker of the Student Senate requesting a 1-week extension for the following positions. Assistant Clerk.
The question is of a 1-week extension on the appointment of Assistant Clerk. All in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The extension is granted. Continuing on.
Application of Ashley Parsons to be seated in the 115th Student Senate.
The application is referred to the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Continuing on. Hearing none and seeing no more special orders of the Senate, we are now in line for the motion period. Are there any motions on the floor? Chairwoman Baber. There's been a motion to confirm Haley Haber to the position of a student senator. All in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The nominee is confirmed to the position of student senator. Any other motions on the floor? Chairman Bryant? There's been a motion to confirm Abigail Pogue to the position of Election Commission's member. All in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The nominee is confirmed. Chairwoman Baber? There's been a motion to suspend the rules to allow the nominees to be confirmed. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Chief Justice Buchmeier, you're recognized to come deliver the oath of office. If I could have both of our nominees come down to the front to be sworn in. And just for picture's sake, if you would want to stand in front of the glass podium, that would be awesome. Let's give them a round of applause. Congratulations. And Senator Haber, you are now allowed to take a seat among the body. We welcome you. Thank you so much for showing interest. Is there any other motions on the floor? Senator Tanner. There's been a motion to remove Senator Tanner from the Judiciary Committee. All in favor say aye, or excuse. Let me back up. Back up. Hold up. There's been a motion to remove Senator Tanner from the Judiciary Committee. Are there any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Any other motions on the floor? It's been a long day. Seeing no more motions, is there a motion to dispense with the motion period? Without objection, so ordered. We are now in the call of the introduction of new legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBO 11526, introduced by Senator Calder, a recommendation to paint the Gamecock logo on the field at the Eugene E. Stone III Stadium.
Is there anyone willing to speak on this legislation? Senator Lynn, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hello, everyone. Hope you all had a good Halloween and stayed safe. Unfortunately, Senator Calder will not be here today, so I'll be speaking on his behalf. I'm sure some of us are still recovering from celebrating, so I'll keep this brief. This piece of legislation aims to beautify the school by reintroducing the practice that we once had of painting the Gamecock logo on the soccer field. And there's just a few key notes I'd like to address for this. First and foremost, the paint we use will be the exact same kind that we use currently to paint the lines, so there shouldn't be any issues with that. Additionally, Senator Calder has reached out to both the soccer teams, and we've received their approval. Lastly, I want to note that we are the only school in our conference that doesn't uphold this practice of having our logo on the field. So I really think this would be a good cause to contribute to encouraging student spirit. I hope you guys all approve it. I will yield the floor to questions.
Senator Lynn yields to questions. Are there any questions for Senator Lynn? Chairman Bryant.
He most certainly is. I had the pleasure of watching the game yesterday with him.
Any other questions for Senator Lynn? Senator Morgan. Any other questions for Senator Lynn? Seeing none, thank you. This legislation is referred to the Student Life Committee. Continuing on with the call of the introduction of new legislation.
SBO 11527, introduced by the Student Life Committee, a recommendation to display Garnet Gate through a hyperlink on Blackboard.
Chairwoman Malachi, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. So the legislation is pretty straightforward. Our committee kind of just got to talking and we realized that Garnet Gate is heavily used, but it's not put on one of the most used websites, which is Blackboard, just to help with student life, getting more involved and understanding of everything that goes on campus. And the bottom on the institution page, there's a section that's called Things Made to Need to Know. So we're thinking we add a hyperlink on there to allow Garnet Gate to just go on there as well, so that people can understand what's going on not only within student government, but other organizations as well. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. The legislation is referred to the Student Life Committee. Continuing on, the clerk will read.
SBO 11528, introduced by Senator Kay and Hurd, a resolution to establish an ad hoc committee related to finance reform.
Senator Kay and Hurd are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Afternoon. My first time up here and I didn't even get to wear a suit. Sad, sad day. Anyways, as the speaker and the speaker pro tempore mentioned previously, SBL 28 is an ad hoc legislation for a special committee. The intention is to effectively do one of two things. It is to recommend or make recommendations for any appropriations of student activity funds and to look into how that could be increased or otherwise changed. I'll yield my time to questions.
And with that, Senator Kay yields to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Point of information, I think you did a great job with your first time speaking, so congratulations. Seeing none, thank you. Are there any motions on the floor? Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd. There's been a motion to pass by acclamation. Is there a second? All in favor say aye. All opposed? Since this is a motion by acclamation, any objection to the motion would automatically mean that the motion is killed. Since it is by acclamation, Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd. There's been a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a motion to have a 2-minute recess to confer about this? Okay. Without objection, so ordered. There's been a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Is there another motion on the floor now that we're in the suspension of rules? Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd. There's been a motion to adopt the legislation of SBL 11528. Is there a second? Objection. So now we'll go to a voice call on the motion to adopt the legislation. So we're not actually voting on the legislation itself, but we're voting on the motion for the legislation. So this will be a Senator Miller. Yeah. So since we're in the suspension of rules, I'll just talk plainly. So essentially, it is two separate motions that he's made. So the suspension of rules is what we do to have the Chief Justice come down to deliver the oath of office. It's basically a period where like our rules of procedure really don't govern, right? So a second motion is needed to be made for the vote on the piece of legislation. So essentially, we're wanting to vote on legislation now rather than having it go to committee and then vote on it next week. But there was an objection to the motion to vote on the legislation, meaning I can't go ahead and move to the vote on the piece of legislation, so we're voting on the motion. Chairman Bryan.
So with his motion for the motion to adopt,
Correct.
when we vote on that, a vote aye will be to adopt it. We won't move to like a second vote, but this is a debatable motion. So like we could do a voice vote with something called a division, or we could just open the floor to debate prior to voting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's uncharted territory for everybody, so thank you for that. So what we'll do is this is a debatable motion. Is there any senator wishing to speak on the motion to adopt the legislation? Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd, you're recognized.
Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the confusion that we've had, but to put all the senators in the loop, it is our intention that this legislation pass now, so that way we can then read across the desk who has been nominated to be the chair of this committee, and then we can immediately open it up so that way you guys can join this committee and we can get to work, because everyone is in agreement, at least per my understanding, that this is something that needs to be researched. With that being said, the confusion is over. It was reported initially to our Rules Committee that this motion was not occurring today, but it is. It is occurring right now. I know, that's what I'm saying. It was reported that it wasn't.
Please wait till the speaker yields to questions.
It was reported that this motion was not happening today. So transparency, it was not reported that this motion was happening today, but nonetheless, we are senators, and I think we can handle the discussion. If you read the piece of legislation, it's not taking any stance on it. So your vote right now, in my opinion, should be, do we need to get to work on this issue? And I think that is an easy yes. So thank you. I yield to questions.
The Speaker Pro Tempore yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Speaker Pro Tempore, Senator Kaye? So point of information, rules happened 10 minutes before Senate started, so we were not able to move the legislation over. So if you go in the rules folder, you will find all 4 pieces. Of course. Senator Miller.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So I think this is going to be one of our most important committees that occurs over the course of this Senate session. And the reason why is because the most important duty we have as a Senate is to appropriate our student activity fund, which is about $180,000. And so Finance Committee, they're always busy appropriating this money. And originally the idea was that this Finance Committee that we have would work through the process of creating a larger package and conducting the research. It's become clear that our Finance Committee is always busy with actually appropriating the money, that we wanted to separate it out and give an ad hoc committee, a special committee, the opportunity to dig deeper and actually do research on this, because it's important. It's a $180,000, and our goal is that this committee will report back to us as a Senate with research, interviews, and tangible data that we can then as a Senate act on. Their job is to research for us, because we have to be honest with ourselves. To a certain point, our Finance Committee, our Student Senate as a whole, cannot do the research.
And point of information, if this motion were not to pass, it would still go through the legislative cycle. It would still go to committee. So again, this motion is just voting on it now versus next week, and it basically not going to Finance Committee. So we're not necessarily voting one, if you vote against the motion, you're not killing the bill per se. You're not killing the piece of legislation. It'll just go through the 2-week cycle instead of the 1-week cycle that the motion is suggesting. Any other questions? Senator LaPinta. So, point of information, it was on the first reading calendar, and as it stands, the Speaker's office prepared it as it was like every piece of legislation going to a 2-week cycle. Then there was a motion to pass by acclamation, which meant we were going to vote on it now instead of next week, and it was going to not go through committee. That motion was objected to and it failed, and then there was another motion to suspend the rules. And now we're at the motion to take a vote on the legislation. So if we, again, vote to make, if we vote on the motion for the legislation, it will not go into finance or next week. We will vote on the legislation now if the motion passes. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Senator, Chairwoman Ravi.
This piece of legislation was at the request of the Speaker's office.
Yeah, a point of information again. This ad hoc committee is a way for Senate to do research on possible legislation about increasing the student activity fee and about financial reform on campus. And so this was kind of a way for us to kind of really get some research on the topic away from the work that you're doing in your other committees. So it really is just like a passion project that we're making a little bit more formal, or we want to make a little bit more formalized, or the sponsors of this bill. Senator Hamilton.
Yeah. So we are trying to, there's different asks, but we would like for this committee to be able to get a report together before we adjourn for winter break. And so that's why every week is an additional time for them to meet, for them to research. And so that's why, the difference here, I mean, this is a very procedural motion, but the difference here is whether or not we have to send this to Finance Committee and then have them discuss whether this is an issue that needs to be discussed. I think we're in agreement. So why slow down our process and continue to make this bill jump through hoops when our students have elected us to get this done?
Senator Hensley.
I'm saying, so if you read the legislation, it has a separate timeline for dissolvement, and I believe it's late January.
It's the last session in January.
Yeah. Yeah. So it dissolves. It has a definitive date of when it will dissolve. So we want to give them as much time as possible to research.
Chairwoman Weber.
So if we pass this by acclamation, right? Well, not by acclamation, but if we adopt it right now, what will happen is, yes, this committee will exist. It will will then move to give it a chairman, members. But any recommendation, any legislation that this committee recommends to the Senate will have to go through finance. There is nothing that this committee will touch that finance committee will not. So you have to understand that at the final recommendation of this committee, it will be forwarded to finance committee, because special committees are not allowed to sponsor, they're not allowed to receive legislation. So there would be no way for us to assign any legislation to this committee. Everything would still be going through finance.
Senator Barnes.
No. So as the Speaker's office informed the Senate, this does not count towards your 3.
Senator Barnes.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great question. So as a matter of fact, I have a senator who isn't here today that asked me to move them onto this committee during our motion period today. There's a lot of interest and senators want to get to work. So the only thing we would be preventing is 1 more week of research.
Senator Harvey.
Yes. So with the people I've spoken about or spoken with who are passionate about this topic, yes, they are waiting at the bait to start researching, working on this, because it's their passion project, as the speaker mentioned. But because of that, I would also raise, so his question was, do you think that an extra week would really be worth it? I would flip the question. Do you really think that an extra week of sending this to Finance Committee for them to just discuss whether or not it should exist would be, beneficial to their time when they're already a busy committee? And do you think it would be beneficial to this Senate to have 1 less week for senators to join, to start researching, to get this done?
Any other questions? Chairwoman Ravi.
So, to be clear, whether or not it would go to finance, it's still the decision of this body. So the question is, do we think that we would benefit by just 1 more week of hearing, yes, this should be made, or no, it's the recommendation, it shouldn't? I think we've all recognized, reading the Daily Gamecock, hearing our sessions here, that we have a problem we need to address. And I think it's our duty to act swiftly, efficiently, and responsibly. And I believe, part of, my position in using our rules of procedure to navigate legislation is to time things whether or not, they should be prioritized in our timeline. And I think this is of the utmost importance.
Any other questions? Senator Gruner. Point of information, this is a debatable motion, so as soon as Speaker Pro Tem Poore Hurd is done taking questions and yields to the floor, any senator wishing to speak on the topic may come up and to the podium and speak their opinions about it. So any senator that's in finance is welcome to speak, but also any senator in the body is welcome to speak as well. Senator LaPinta.
Okay, that's another great question. So this was a request. It starts with there is Senate interest, right? There's Senate interest in this topic that makes its way to the Speaker's office. It was the request of the Speaker's office that we get an ad hoc committee together to pursue this further. Now that it's here, if this is passed, the difference between just a group of senators working on this and an ad hoc committee is that it gives these group of senators legitimacy to go and interview, university officials, to interview clubs receiving money to hear their preferences and to work as a sort of hearing panel. When you think of Congress, you think of people sitting and interviewing people and trying to understand further. That's a whole lot different of a setting than just a group of senators meeting at T Coop to sit down and put together a piece of legislation. And so those senators who are interested, I know there are senators who have begun research and want to contribute to this committee, but they are missing that component of being able to email, being able to ask, hey, I'm with the ad hoc committee on finance reform. Can you provide me X information? Can you sit down and talk about X with the committee?
And point of information, if the piece of legislation, whether we vote on it today or vote on it through committee and next week, regardless of the outcome, if the ad hoc committee is willing to stand per your vote, they would meet with university officials that are already kind of knowing what we're doing here. And so having that ability to meet with a committee rather than just a group of senators can sometimes provide more legitimacy in some situations. Any other questions for the Speaker Pro Tempore? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any other senators wishing to speak on the motion? Chairwoman Ravi. No, you're fine.
I want to make one thing very clear. And the thing that I want to make clear is this is not a time-based thing. The time is not what concerns me. It is the opinion and the voice of the people of the Finance Committee. That is the reason why I am wanting to send this to Finance Committee. By immediately just passing this kind of piece of legislation without sending it to committee, you are undermining the authority of your committee chairs and your committee itself, and that sets a very dangerous precedent that whatever comes directly out of the Speaker's office can just be passed without even going towards committees. The point of committees are to vote on legislation, and that is why this piece of legislation needs to go to the Finance Committee. I yield to questions.
The Chairwoman yields to questions. Are there any questions for the Chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any other senators? Chairman Kuhn, you are recognized.
Hi, everyone. Obviously, I think Finance Committee would love an opinion, but I also understand, for the sake of brevity, I think we're all going to be looped into this process. I definitely understand, some people's concerns. We don't want to always dodge committees. It's not a great way to rule anything. But I just think for the sake of brevity today, let's just keep on getting on with people's business. And I think Finance Committee will definitely get a say in anything that does come out of this committee. I think this is just a great voice and a great officialization of legislation or a search for legislation, essentially. So a Finance Committee will get the last say on any finance legislation, so I think it'll be all right. I yield to questions.
The Chairman yields to questions. Chairwoman Ravi.
Probably, but we're not in rules anymore, are we? So I say let's just get it done with,
Any other senators wishing to ask a question? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any other senators wishing to speak on the motion? Senator Morgan. There's been a motion to move to the previous question, which is the motion to move to a vote on the legislation. This will be a roll call vote. If you all in favor say aye, you are voting for the motion to vote on the legislation. You're not voting on the legislation itself. If you vote nay, you are denying the motion, and the legislation will go into its 2-week cycle like the regular process, as with other pieces of legislation. Chairman Bryant. Yeah. Yes, yeah, there was an objection to this motion being made, so the motion itself has become debatable, and so now we'll move to a vote on the motion to go into the vote on the legislation. No, is there a motion to have a 2-minute recess to confer about this? All right. So this will be a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll. Again, you're saying aye. If you say aye to the motion, you are wanting to vote on the legislation today. You're not voting on the actual legislation right now. If you say nay, you are wanting to have the legislation have its, please. If you're voting nay, you want the you're voting negative on the motion, meaning that the motion would cease to exist if the nays were to be. Is there a motion for a 2-minute recess to confer about this? Without objection, so ordered. Since we're in still the suspension of the rules, I will speak plainly just for clarity for the body. There has been a motion to move to the previous question. So what I am about to do is I'm about to ask, is there a second? And then if there is a second, someone will say that there is a second or not. And then if you object, just like Chairwoman Ravi and Chairman Baber did in the previous motions, you say objection. Then we will move to a period of debate on the motion to move to the previous question. The previous question is the adoption of the legislation. So if no one objects and there's a second, we move immediately into the vote on the legislation itself right now, today, tonight. Any questions? Cool. And again, this is suspension of rules, so normally I wouldn't be able to talk plainly like this, but we're in a gray area. All right. Here we go. There's been a motion to move to the previous question. Is there a second? Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. We are now on the call of the vote on SBL 11528. The clerk will read.
Baber.
Or excuse, the clerk will read the title of the legislation.
SBL 11528, introduced by Senator Kay and Hurd, a resolution to establish an ad hoc committee related to finance reform.
Point of information, we are now voting on the legislation itself. This will be a voice vote unless there is a division or objection. All in favor of the legislation say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is adopted. Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd. There's been a motion to have the clerk read one more communication from the desk. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered.
A communication from the Office of the Speaker of the Student Senate to appoint Jacob Vaught as chairman of the Ad Hoc Committee on Finance Reform.
The question is of nomination of Jacob Vaught to the chairmanship of the Ad Hoc Committee on Finance Reform. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The senator is nominated to the chairmanship, or approved for the chairmanship, excuse me. Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd. There's been a motion to add the senator to the ad hoc committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Point of information, are there any motions on the floor to be added to this committee? Chairwoman Heater. There's been a motion to add Chairwoman Heater to the ad hoc committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Kay. There's been a motion to move Senator Kay to the ad hoc committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd. There's been a motion to add Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd to the ad hoc committee on finance reform. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any other senators wishing to join Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd? There's been a motion to add the senator to the ad hoc committee on finance reform. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Any other senators wishing to join the ad hoc committee on financial reform? Senator Lapsley, you're recognized. There's been a motion to add Senator Lapsley to the Ad Hoc Committee on Finance Reform. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Any other senators wishing to add themselves? All right. Seeing none, we're now still on the call of the Speaker Pro Tempore Hurd. There's been a motion to end the suspension of rules to get back into the first reading calendar. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now on the call of the introduction of new legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBL 11529, introduced by Senator Vaught, a bill to permit the Senate Finance Committee to allocate funds to student organizations.
Senator Vaught, you're recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hi, everyone. I'll keep that brief since that one took a little while. Student organizations requested about $27,000, so $27,513.49. The Finance Committee approved the allocation of $17,541.71, but there is an amendment that Chairman Kuhn will mention. We approved 12 organizations, and I'll end it there, and I yield the floor to questions.
Senator Vaught yields to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Chairman Kuhn. There's been a motion to add Amendment 1 to the legislation. Does the sponsor find this amendment friendly or unfriendly?
Find it friendly.
The sponsor does find it friendly. The Amendment 1 is adopted. Any other questions for the senator?
I move to pass this by acclamation.
Seeing none, is there a motion to pass by acclamation? There's been a motion to pass by acclamation. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. The legislation is adopted. Continuing on with the call, the introduction of new legislation, the clerk will now read. Seeing none, we're now in the call of the uncontested calendar. The clerk will now read.
SBL 11522, introduced by Senator Harvey, a recommendation to increase student awareness of transportation services on campus.
Senator Harvey, you are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hey, I'll keep it really brief. There's nothing new added. We all heard about it last week, so if you have any questions, I yield to questions.
Senator Harvey yields to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Chairwoman Heater.
Sorry.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Since it was on the uncontested calendar, we will now move to a vote on the legislation. This shall be a voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The legislation is adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested calendar.
SBL 11524, introduced by Senators Hamilton, Hurd, Kuhn, LaPinta, Montalto, Ravi, and Whitehead, a bill to reform the Senate attendance policy.
The senators are recognized to speak on the legislation.
Hi guys, you just heard from me last week, so it's basically just revamping the attendance policy. If anybody has any questions, just let any of us know. And with that, I yield to questions.
The senator yields to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Senator Barnes.
So the ad hoc committee does not affect any of your attendance policies. So right now, like the new policy is that you have 3 unexcused absences for Senate, for general Senate sessions, and then you have 3 unexcused absences from your committee meetings. The ad hoc absences don't count at all.
Any other questions for the senator? Chairwoman Bracy.
Sure. So the current policy is that you have 3 unexcused absences for Senate and 2 for committee. We updated that to 3 for both, just to make it easier. a violation of either policy by missing the fourth session at either committee meeting is considered a violation. So it's not 3 total, it's 3 at either. And then senators must be notified before they can be removed, just to give you some extra protection. We lowered the threshold to remove a senator for a violation of the absence policy from 2/3 to a simple majority. We also created a new absence forgiveness policy. Basically, we said that there can be up to 2 unexcused absences that is completely forgiven if you attend a extra credit event, essentially. If you go to an event that the Office of the Speaker designates as a absence makeup event, you can get 1 unexcused absence removed, and this can be used to forgive up to 2. So you can use it twice. So yeah, that's basically it.
And point of information, types of events that the Speaker's office would designate as forgiving events would be certain tabling events put on by the VP's office or student government in general, or initiatives put on by the Speaker's office themselves. So food for thought could possibly be counted as a forgiving event. Yeah. Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, thank you so much. Since this was on the uncontested calendar, we will now move to a vote on the legislation. This will be a voice vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The legislation is adopted. Continuing on, the clerk will read. Hearing none, we are now on the call of the contested calendar. The clerk will now read. Hearing none, we are now in line for a period of open discussion. Does any senator wish to bring a matter of attention to the body? Chairman Bryant. Point of information, our rules of procedure don't get this specific, so I thank you for your patience as we tried to navigate between Robert's Rules 11th edition. Chairman Kuhn. Yes. Point of information, the best gift one could receive. Right. Little does she know I have Robert's Rules for Dummies book in my office. That is one of her birthday presents. Any other senator wishing to bring a matter of attention to the body? Seeing none, we are now in line for a period of announcements. Are there any announcements from the floor? Seeing none, I do have an announcement, but I will keep it brief. I did want to thank you guys for your patience today. We did a lot of really cool parliamentary procedure stuff. So if you have any questions, please ask myself or any of my team or our codes expert, the judiciary chair. Like I said, it took us a little while to get through some of the rules, the deep rules of Robert's Rules. So I thank you for your patience. I did want to give an update. I gave a presentation on some of the results from Food for Thought this morning. We are at approximately around 1,000 students reached at the event. If you add certain things that are away from the Google Sheet. So that being said, if you took notes on a notes app, please upload those by midnight tonight. As myself and my staff will start to go through the Google Sheet to make it look nice and clean it up this weekend so we can hand it to assessment Monday morning of next week. So if you have any questions on that, please let us know. Yeah, and I think that's all I have. Any questions for myself? Oh, and one thing, obviously today was a dress down day. Please be aware that it was in celebration of post-Halloween. Next Wednesday does not constitute post-Halloween anymore. So we will be going back to our business professional attire next Wednesday. All right. Is there any other announcements that the senators wish to bring to the attention of the body? Seeing none, with no further announcements, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. The Senate will now stand adjourned until Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. If I could have Senator Vaught come to the front.